Why don't you, to start out, introduce yourself a little bit, like your name, a bit of what you're doing right now, who you are, just so that people, if they don't know who you are, can get to know you a little bit.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate y'all having me. I'm Kory Caudill. I am a pianist, keyboardist, record producer, and I own a company, I own a writing and production house in Nashville, Tennessee. And we have a partnership with a publishing company based in Toronto. And through that, we work on commercial pop music, country music. I am a musical director in a concert series that's launching this spring in partnership with the Episcopal Church. And I'm originally from Eastern Kentucky, and I moved down to Nashville in 2004. And I think that's about. I'm sure if y'all are doing a series like this where you're asking musicians questions about themselves, you're used to getting long-winded answers because we all like to talk about ourselves. So I'll do my best to keep it short and relevant.
It's fine. We love hearing about everything about everyone and how different it is. So yeah, this is a series that we do with artists of all kinds, visual artists, performing artists. So it's interesting to listen to. So as a child, what was your dream job? What do you think you'd be doing?
My dream job as a child was to be a performer. There was a live concert video, Yanni Live at the Acropolis. And you might hear the name Yanni and think, that's what you listen to when you clean your house or something. But it's a really, really hip concert video. And I used to come home and pretend that I was that guy. So I wanted to do that. And I wanted to be a studio musician and a record producer. And I loved country music, so I always wanted to have some sort of a foot in country music, but I didn't want to be limited to that. So those were my goals really from a young age. They were very specific, and somehow I kind of stumbled into the landing in the thick of all of it.
Yeah, you did. You made your dreams come true. I feel like a lot of kids wanted to be like they'd see like a concert on TV and be like, "Wow, I want to do that." And you actually did that. So that's very impressive.
Well, thank you. I had a lot of resources around me. I had a lot of good people, a lot of good musicians, and a lot of good mentors, and been nudged in the right direction.
That's good. So when you were first starting out in your career, I mean, I guess since you stuck with your childhood dream, then maybe, but did you expect to be doing the things that you're doing now?
I'd hoped to be doing the things that I'm doing right now sooner than right now. But there, in hindsight, I would have. I'm 34 right now. I would have liked to been launching a concert series or to have a serious footprint in Nashville as a producer or as a business person in Nashville. I would like to have done that. I thought around 28, 29, and in hindsight, I was nowhere near equipped as I should be. Um, so I'd hoped to the things that we're doing right now. Somehow we've got some things up and running during COVID that are coming to fruition, and they're things that I had hoped would have happened by now. So we'll see what happens.
It's true. COVID kind of threw a wrench in everything. So I guess this can be like a pre-COVID and during COVID question, but what does a typical day look like for you?
Well, that's a good question, and for we're in the rare group of people in the music industry where COVID actually kind of presented some opportunities, or we tried to find a silver lining somewhere and take advantage of it because I tour full time with a country artist named Justin Moore. So I have two typical days. I have a touring day and I have a Nashville day. Our touring day, we're on a tour bus, so we travel overnight and we have beds and bunks and stuff. So we sleep. I'll fall asleep in Nashville and wake up in Kansas City or wherever, God willing, and we'll get up and I, at the risk of making it sound too cool, pretty much when you're out there on tour, we don't really have to do anything other than play music at about 8 p.m. But I take advantage of that time to get my other businesses up and running. I'll find a dressing room and I'll set up a mobile recording rig and I'll work on post production from the week's recording sessions. I'll knock out a bunch of emails. I'll do conference calls. So I'll make a work day out of a day out there, and then we'll play a concert at night, and you kind of rinse and repeat. In Nashville, um, uh, I have a 3 year old and a 1.5 year old, and so the mornings are just the circus around here. And then um, I will either come up here to my bonus room and do some office work, and then I'll go into the studio that we lease and just record all day, and then come back and do the whole thing. But all of that's very fluid. That's what I like about the music industry is that there's really not a lot of monotony to it. Touring doesn't. Touring can be a little too inconsistent sometimes, but um, when you approach the business the way we do in Nashville, it's enough to not be redundant, but at the same time not wear you out.
That sounds like the perfect balance of both, having like something consistent enough that like you have a good routine, but also exciting and different almost every day.
It is. It can be. The tours are actually structured in a way that they're supposed to be identical every day, and I thought that was ridiculous growing up because I know work. My dad ran a performing arts center in Eastern Kentucky, and I would see the rider contracts come through for some of these people, and I'd be like, "This is ridiculous. Why do they have to have X kind of metal silverware and real plates and these things are ridiculous. And this brand of paper towel, and it's because they're not at home. And if they don't have some type of structure out there, you'll go crazy. It's exciting for a while, for a couple of years, and then after a certain amount of time, if you don't feel at home, then you'll get the best of you.
Hmm. I didn't ever think about that before, so that makes a lot of sense. So, what is one piece of advice that you would give to a young artist or student based on your past experiences?
I'm not successful enough to give advice to anybody, but I can tell you a couple things from some folks that I admire, and one thing from um, so my favorite musician is a guitar player named Pat Metheny, and in one of his interviews, um, he was asked the same question, and he said people, young musicians and young artists especially, tend to look at their bigger goal and say, well, gosh, I want to be a famous musician, or I want to be a successful visual artist, or if I only had a record deal, if I only had a publisher for my writing, if I only had this, then I could do this. And he suggested people stop thinking in those terms and start to look at it in terms of what can I do in the next 10 minutes that'll set those things in motion. So for me, it was, well, my left hand isn't as good as my right hand, so I guess I can go run some scales and then start there and then look at what those little increments are that lead up to your bigger goals because you can make those things happen immediately. The second thing is from my business partner, who's a fellow named Mark Costanzo, and Mark is a guru in the producing world and publishing artist development. He had a hit song as an artist in 2000 that he still laughs about and everything, but he's one of my most trusted. I trust him as much as I do anybody in the business. And he told me as I started navigating away from the performance side a little bit and into the business that the music business isn't hard. You always hear that entertainment industry, the music business, it's such a hard thing to be in. He said, well, it's not. The music business is emotional, and that's why it's difficult. But the business side is really easy. So if you are able to separate your art from your business, um, it's surprisingly simple to find a way to make those things practical and make a living. Wall Street's tough. Running a restaurant is tough. Sending some emails off uh, to see if we can book a gig or something. That's easy, but it's
I hate to
emotional.
say it, but for once, Patrick was right. I'm sorry. I thought I was on mute.
um, uh, and the last thing that I can tell you is that uh, from me, whatever your goals are long term, it's great to have them and great to have specific things in mind, but it's also important to look at the process of getting there and be able to recognize when you're having fun and when you're enjoying all this stuff because the goals are great, but you rarely stay on top once you get there. And you come to find that the process of getting where you want to be is where all the life happens.
That's some really good advice. I just realized I accidentally skipped a question. What's your background and educational experience that from growing up to now?
Um, well, I originally am from Floyd County, Kentucky. They learned me real good there. Um, so I went to high school at Prestonsburg. I hope some of y'all got my dad joke, please. But uh, I went to Governor School for the Arts in Kentucky, and then I went to Belmont University from 2004. Should have been until 2008, but I wound up touring a little bit, and it took me an extra year, and I got out of school with a bachelor's in commercial music in '09. And my senior year, we started touring with Leonard Skinner and Hank Williams Jr., and we stayed out there ever since. So that's
Oh, thank you. So, what do you consider to be your most successful career moment or move to your trajectory today?
it, one. I'll tell you when I have it, I think, but to me, that's not been. It's not as much about a moment as much as I think the decision I made a couple of years ago to go into business with business partners that I have right now, knowing that we weren't trying to make money for at least 2 years, and knowing that we were going to build something 24/7 and go through a really rigorous process, and that I was going to have to trust somebody who's done it before, and that our end goal was for me to accomplish a lot of things in the music business that I'd like to accomplish. And that was a crazy process, and it was really, really difficult, and we're on the back end of that now, and it's starting to pay off. And so for me, probably the most pivotal moment was committing to that.
That sounds like it's a real leap of faith to be like, okay, well, let's just see see how this goes and go for it. Okay. So, what role does an artist like yourself play in our society as a whole, do you believe?
I I think that's a that's different relative to the times. I just made a record with a hip hop artist named Wordsmith. It's a collaboration with me and some jazz music and some Appalachian instrumental stuff with hip hop. And the fellow who produced it saw the two of us working together on different projects. And he said, "Well, this would be great. You guys should do this right now because he has some things to say, and you guys can make a record that's quote in touch with the vibes of the planet." So, uh, and right now, it, it's a loaded question because I think we all know how important the arts are, obviously. But this time last year, I would have said, well, musicians serve a role as far as awareness. I think, and right now, I think the arts serve a purpose of healing. There's times in our history where they serve a purpose of protest. I walked out of college. You hear a lot about millennials having walked in their professional lives into one catastrophe after another. Well, I walked out of college into my career after the financial collapse in 2008. And at that time, music was an escape. That was when everything else was crumbling around people and they needed somewhere to go to forget about all of it. What we're doing right now with the concert series is part of a project called Becoming Beloved Community. And that's where the Episcopal Church is saying, well, we've got these beautiful spaces. Let's make everybody from every background, every religion, every political affiliation feel welcome in one spot to watch music. So right now, I think the arts serve a purpose of healing. But I have learned that if they serve a purpose of um, you just having fun or of self glorification or that kind of thing, you ought not be doing it.
Yeah.
Or just keep it to yourself. I mean, I love playing stuff and playing for fun, but there's certain things that I'm not going to let anybody pay me to do something that is about me.
Makes a lot of sense. So, what encourages you or inspires you in your job and what you do?
Well, up until a few years ago, I wanted to. I just had music in me. I worked my entire life, and I had compositions in my head. I had things in my fingers that I wanted to get out, and I hoped that there was value in that, and that it could lead to a profitable business and stuff. But after becoming a parent, um, that shifted to me wanting to make sure that whatever I did uh, was focused on making the world around my kids better. So I stopped making music that didn't mean anything at that point. So for not to get political or anything, but for example, I had a daughter in 2018, and when you're filling out her baby book and you have to list who is what at the time, you have to list a leader that was elected who was bragged about grabbing women. And I don't want my daughter having to live in a world like that. So I make music for a living. So how do I make music that has a positive impact on her surroundings with that in mind? And I think that those things will be fluid throughout their lives, but that's what motivates me now.
Some really good inspiration. So, what are some of your current goals and what are you looking to do next in your career?
Um, we're a couple weeks away from launching a concert series that we've been building for 2.5 years silently, and we're also a couple months away, I think, from going pretty public with the things we're doing in the commercial music world. And we've been building those behind the scenes. And so, short term, I want to get those things up and running. I want those things to have a positive impact. I want to be a contributing member of the Nashville music scene, which is very important to me. Beyond that, I've had a lot of people who have been really, really good to me in my life and in my career in the arts, and I would love to be able to pay those things forward, to do what my business partner Mark has done for me and taken. He came into my life and said, he came in from Toronto and was visiting Nashville, and he saw me in some sessions and just kind of caught wind of me, and he took me off to the side and he said, "Hey, this is what you're doing right now. I want you to know what you're capable of and what you can do if you want, and you're so much more than just this and this." Uh, and I'd like to be in a position to be able to do that for somebody in the next 10 years.
Yeah, to give back to the people just like they gave back to you. Okay. So right now I finished with my list of questions. So if anyone has any questions for Kory, you can unmute yourself and ask, or you could type it in the chat and I will ask them whatever you would like to do. So if anyone has any questions.
I do. Do you think that your bachelor's on commercial music, I believe, was necessary to get to where you are today?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that one more time? I'm sorry.
If you think that your college education, like your bachelor's in commercial
Okay.
music, was necessary or helpful in getting to where you are today?
That's a great question because it's different for each individual. I know people. When I moved to Nashville in 2004, I gigged outside of school just to uh, keep some money in my pocket, and I gigged with people who were my age who were not going to school. A fellow named Derek Wells, for example, uh, Derek Drek. Excuse me. If you could probably Google him. He and I used to gig at the Tin Roof before the Tin Roof was a cool thing, and he didn't go to school, and he's probably one of the most successful musicians in Nashville right now. But he knew exactly where he wanted to be in music, and it was just in country music. It was just in commercial music. Um, I had a real itch to get to the bottom of jazz and have an understanding of it, and to um, uh, to get really fluent in a lot more than just country music. So school was right for me because it gave me a safe place to learn those things. And like at Belmont, we had a studio instrumentalist class, so you can go in and you can be a studio musician, um, and you can learn without learning in public. Because if you go into the session scene professionally, you one bad 3 hour session, and then that's it. You just don't get called back. So for me, it was right. For other folks, it might not have been. I think it just depends on what your goals are. But either way, I will say that folks like Derek did get an education, um, and they did constantly seek to learn from folks. They just did it in a different environment. The last thing I'll say about that is um, when I went to pick a college, a mentor of mine said, "You're not picking the school; you're picking a teacher." Um, so I hope that helps.
It really did. That was a great answer. Thank you.
It looks like Gavin has a question. So Gavin, you can go ahead and ask.
Where have you found inspiration to be writing music?
Man, me and Gavin have played music together a couple of times. Man, it's good to see you. Um, uh, that's a great question too. Right now, um, honestly, I'm kind of burnt out on a lot of things. I don't know if y'all listen to what y'all are listening to, but my wife, she's a speech pathologist. She's not in the music business at all, and she likes top 40 radio. And if we're taking a trip, I've got zero control over that radio, and she is just belting her heart out. But and I tell you what else, if I could bring home something with a 20-piece orchestra and this composition and be like, check out what we just did. Oh, that's great. But buddy, you put on something top 40 and throw some explicit lyrics in there, and there we go. So um, uh, but to me, that stuff has saturated everything, and we're in scrolling culture right now on our Instagrams and Facebooks and stuff. You're we're being fed the same music over and over, and not that it's bad music, but after so much, it becomes predictable, and I don't. I like a balance between predictability, something I can latch on to, and something that piques my interest, something that I didn't know was coming because it was in somebody else's heart to write and not mine. So right now, honestly, to answer your question, I'm trying to find that inspiration. I'm looking into roots music. I've gotten back into 50s and 60s jazz, not because I was ever in love with it, but because it came from deep in people's souls. And right now I just need that in my listening experience, and hopefully it inspires something, because right now it's just kind of a sterile time in pop music.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions? I kind of have a question. It
Yeah.
sounds like you do a lot of collaboration with other artists and other people and genres outside of your own. So what's your favorite collaboration that you've done?
That's a great question too. So a lot of the collaborations that I do are country collaborations. But the most recent one that I've done, I can't imagine me beating it. It was a collaboration with the hip hop artist I mentioned earlier. His name is Wordsmith. He is a African American gentleman from Baltimore. I am a hillbilly from Floyd County, Kentucky. Not Prestonsburg, but like deep Floyd County. And he and I started working on music together because we met at a concert at a military base where they had different genres on the bill. And so I ran into him, I got his information, we stayed in touch, and we started working on a record just because we wanted to work on a record. And mid-record, George Floyd was murdered. All of these, Breonna Taylor, all of these things started happening, and he and I had grown to be friends over the course of a year and a half, a couple of years, and eventually we just sat down and I said, "Man, you know, I'm here for you if you want to make some music that lets you say what you want to say and put you at a podium. I'll give you the instrumentals, and we'll go from there." And it's one thing to hear about what folks who don't look like you or who have different backgrounds as you go through in life. It's another thing to be in depth into making an album and putting your all's souls together, and to hear the things that he's experienced uh, as a black gentleman in this day and age. He is probably the sweetest human being I've ever met in my life, and he was profiled one time. He met he quote unquote met the description of somebody who may have done something wrong, and he, if I'm not mistaken, he was taken to jail for way too long without the opportunity to speak to his children or anything, uh, just because of how he looked. And when you know somebody that deep, it's so much more than just uh, this happened on the news today. It's, wow, how would anybody do that to somebody so sweet? And so we started working on music, And then as a result of working on music, I've had just the most unbelievable, massive educational experience that I should have had since day one from it. So I don't know that I'll ever have a cooler collaboration than that. That record will be out in May, by the way, May 21st.
Oh, cool. So soon-ish.
Mm.
I guess it's March. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. This sounds cool, especially since you just like randomly met him and you could have easily just like not been there and have never met this person or anything.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That's pretty cool. Does anyone else have any questions? I think Allison's computer died. She messaged me earlier. Oh wait, no, Allison's still here. Someone else left. Okay.
I'm still here, but it's on 1, so.
Is there anything anyone else has? Is there anything else you want to share with us, Kory, to wrap up before we leave?
Not a thing. It's just been a pleasure. I hope I ain't wasted too much of y'all's time.
Oh, definitely not.
And
Yeah, so thank you so much for being here. And this, like Emily said, we'll put this unlisted on YouTube for some of the other people who there's some musical groups that have like rehearsals and things right now. So
Awesome.
for them to go back to and listen to later when not in the midst of rehearsals and school week and everything. But thank you so much for coming out. And I really enjoyed listening to this. So thank you.
my pleasure. Hope to talk to y'all again.
Bye.